Hello, welcome back. Today's video is an in-depth how-to for applying dip powder. So I've gone ahead and done all of my other nails except for this one because otherwise we would be here forever. I'm going to start off by lightly buffing the nail. This is just to get rid of all excess oils that are on the nail. This is pretty much an essential step when applying any sort of acrylic to your nail because otherwise it's going to lift really quickly. So go ahead and lightly buff. You don't want to do it too much, otherwise you will damage your natural nail. And then I'm going to go in with my Dip Prep. This dehydrates the nail, prepares it for product, and will later on prevent lifting and extend the life of your mani. This is not necessarily an essential step, but I would say for me it is. It does lengthen the life of a mani and severely prevent lifting. So just a thin coat of that, dries pretty quickly, and then we will move on to the dip powder stuff. So for this next step you will need a color base. So this is the glue that the powder sticks to. It is essential for this process, and mine is from Nitro. So you will need the glue, the base, your colored dip powder. I'm using Caution by Gelish. Fun fact, this is the first dip powder I ever purchased. It's a navy blue with a very subtle shimmer to it. You will also need a clear clear powder and a soft makeup brush. It doesn't have to be anything special, it's just to brush dust away. And a toothpick is recommended but not essential. So before you open up the dip powder, you just want to turn it around a bit to mix it up. You can use a toothpick to do this as well once you've opened it, but do not shake that container. Do not shake it. So once you've got your powder ready, you want to apply a thin stripe down the center of the nail, avoiding the cuticle area. So this is just to build up an apex. You don't have to do this step, and you also don't have to do this step with the color. You can do this with a clear if you prefer to change your colors up at some point in the process. So just tap off the extra powder. Now this base that I use is particularly thick and it does take a little bit extra time to dry. So I do like to go in around the skin around my nails and brush off that powder first, just to make sure I'm not messing up any of the powder on the nail. If I were to brush over it now, it would likely damage what I have just done. So there you can see where I've applied it. Doesn't have to be perfect, just down the center, and then brush off over the top. I am then grabbing a little cotton wipe, and I will explain what I'm doing with that in a second. I'm now applying a second layer of the base to the majority of my nail, leaving about 1 millimeter or 2 from the cuticle, and wiping off the brush on that cotton wipe. So you want to make sure you're not contaminating your base with any of the powder, otherwise it will make your base sticky and bleh. So dip in the powder again, brush off the excess, and for this particular powder you don't need to do it with all of them, but I do make sure to not brush over where I've just applied it just yet. And there you can see I've left a bit of a gap to my cuticle but covered the rest of the nail. Now if you get to this point in the process and you're thinking to yourself that it looks very bumpy or uneven or anything, don't worry about that, keep going. You do fix that up later in the process. Alright, third layer. For this particular mani I did do 4 just because the powder is not as pigmented as it looks, but it's personal choice. So this time I'm going right up to the cuticle, making sure not to put too much of the base there. You do want to have only a thin layer, otherwise your nails will get incredibly bulky. Wipe off the brush and dip into the powder. Tap off the excess And then I'm going to grab my brush again and just clean up the bits around my skin. This powder is very pigmented on the skin. It does stain a bit, but a quick wash of your hands afterwards fixes that up. Alright, I'm now going to go in with that toothpick and just fix up around the cuticle area to make sure that that line is really smooth and that it's not jagged or uneven or just ugly. And now I'm going to brush off all the excess off the top of the nail. Alright, and last dip, I'm again covering everywhere I just covered with the last step. The only reason I do this is this particular powder is not quite as pigmented as it looks, and it does go quite sheer. Once you put on the top coat, you can notice where you haven't done as much. But again, it's personal preference. Alrighty, dip in the powder for the fourth and final time. Tap it off, and I'm going to brush off that excess dust. I'm now done with the blue powder. You can see where I've covered the entire nail. You can now go ahead and fix up your cuticle area. Admittedly, I didn't have to do that too much for this mani, but it's good just to check. You never know when there's a bit that you can't see. Alright, the lid is on the blue, and now I'm going in with my clear powder. This is not an essential step, but I do it all the time anyway, just to protect the mani. I'm going to twist that container a little bit to mix it up. Now see this blue powder that's all over the desk? That blue powder, if that gets in the clear, you will contaminate it and you will have blue on every other mani you ever do with that clear ever again. So you want to make sure you have brushed off as much of that dust as you can. I'm just using the cotton wipe to go around my nail, get off any excess I have, because I do not want to contaminate my good clear. Alright, now I'm using the base one last time and covering the entire nail, and I will then be dipping that into the clear. Now this ensures that when you go to file later, you're not actually filing off the colour, you will be filing off that top layer. For me, it's a very important step because I'm not the best at not filing off the colour. Alright, wipe off the brush one last time, and I'm going to dip into my clear. Now you'll notice when I go to brush off the dust here, I don't do it over the top of the container. This is just because, like I said before, if any of that blue dust gets in there, catastrophe. Alright, so you can see it now looks quite cloudy. You don't need to worry about that, it looks exactly as it should. Alright, I'm going to wipe off any excess dust. And I am now done with my base and both of my powders. Now you want to go in with my favourite step, the activator. This hardens the powder and makes your nails ready for filing. It is an essential step, and you do need to wait about 2 minutes after applying the first coat before you start filing. So you can see as you apply it here, that cloudiness of the clear layer will disappear and you'll start to see the true colour of the powder. Do not forget to wipe off that brush. I do it every time, but I'm going to say it again. Do not forget to wipe off the brush. Okay, now I'm going to wait about a minute for my nail to completely harden. Now I'm going to use the end of the brush. That's the sound you want to hear. That tells you it's done. It's kind of a plastic on plastic kind of sound. Look, if it's not ready, you will have just smushed all of the powder on your nail and you'll know it's not ready. So now I'm going to go in and file. I start with the side walls just to fix up any of the shape. It's quite easy when you're first starting out to really mess up the pre-existing shape you had. So just a little bit along the sidewalls and free edge does help to clean that up a bit. I then like to go in along the cuticle area and try and get it as smooth as possible. I don't like having a lot of bulk there. And then just going over the top. Now I've sped this up because nobody wants to watch me filing for so long, but you can still see the gist of what I'm doing. I'm just going along the top, making sure it is all smooth, ready for top coat. I've also buffed out any weird bumpiness. I had a bit of a bump towards the free edge of my nail. I've now gotten rid of that. And then after I am happy with the filing I have done, I'm then going to go in with the buffing block. Now you only want to do this step if you are using a dip top coat. If you're using gel, do not do this. So you want to make sure that the surface of the nail is as smooth as possible. You want to make that the smoothest nail you've ever seen, because otherwise any roughness will show up under a dip top coat. So when you're happy with how smooth it is, you can run your nail over it, just brush off any excess nail dust that's gone everywhere and apply a second layer of activator. This is just to be very, very, very sure that the nails are ready and finished. And there you can see how smooth the nail is compared to what it was just after I'd applied the activator the first time. You now want to go in with a glossy top coat if you're doing a dip top coat. This is the final step, and you do need to apply this in 2 coats. So the first coat that you apply, as you'll see as I do it, needs to be in very quick strokes. If you don't do this, the brush may harden up and you really don't want to have to deal with the aftermath of that. So I'm just wiping off any excess activator from the nail. Now if you find that your brush does harden up, you can buy, and it does come in a lot of sets, a brush cleaner or a brush saver or a brush restorer. There's a million names it has, and all you do is swap that out for the brush that's in your top coat, and that will make sure that any chunks that are in the brush, or whether it's hardened up, disappears. So that looks pretty shiny now as it's still wet, and I'm going to wait about 40 seconds to 2 minutes for that to dry up a bit, and then I'm going to apply a second coat that is more precise. This is your final coat, so you kind of want to make sure this one looks really good. Remember to cap the free edge, and then when you are done about 5 minutes later, it should be dry, and it will dry in this same glossiness that you see now. So that is with a dip top coat. However, you can also use a gel top coat, as I prefer to do. I just don't particularly like dip top coat, so I do use gel, and I'm going to show you how to apply that now. So going back to just before I had buffed my nails, I roughed up the surface, and I am now going in with my no wipe gel top coat. You just want to apply one even layer across the top of your nail and then cure it for 1 minute. I'm using my mini tiny adorable UV lamp. If you are doing this step, yes, you need the UV or LED lamp. And make sure you cap the sidewall and free edge just to prevent any lifting of just the gel layer. Now I find this top coat doesn't last as long, but it does stay shinier for a lot longer and is a personal preference of mine. So 1 minute later, your top coat is done, it is cured, and that's the final mani. Thank you so much for joining me. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, it would mean a lot to me, and I'll see you in the next one.